One of the most common concerns that I hear from women, even from their late 30s into their 40s, is their weight or their metabolism, which also goes along with their energy. It can also tie into a brain fog and, so many other symptoms. It's our metabolism that can all of a sudden be a really tough point in this point in life because there's this perfect storm of things impacting that. And that's why today on the podcast, I talk with Stephanie and Marnie of the Art of Living Well podcast. They're both board certified integrative health practitioners and holistic health and wellness coaches that empower women through their programs and one-on-one work to just live their happiest, healthiest lives. And we talk all about metabolism in midlife, what the big factors are here, what's really, working against us. And some of these things can be really surprising because oftentimes it's the things that worked really well for us in our 20s, maybe 30s, that all of a sudden start to backfire in our 40s or 50s. So this is an amazing conversation. They really drop so many incredible insights that I think are going to change the way you're thinking about your metabolism and controlling your weight, but also just supporting your overall health and well-being through this time. And there are some very good actionable tips that you can take starting today to really start to change the story that you're experiencing with your energy, again, the brain fog, your weight, all of that, and really turn that around for the better. So enjoy. Be ready to maybe take some notes, but they will also have links in the show notes for you to be able to follow up on. Marnie and Stephanie, thank you so much for being with me today.
Well, thank you for having us, Miranda. We're excited.
Yeah, we're really excited to be here.
So today we're talking about, I think, what is a very hot topic and a very common concern that I hear from patients going into midlife, which is our weight. Now, to start off, what can you tell us? Like, why is our metabolism such a big concern around this time?
Well, I almost think it's like this perfect storm for some women because as we age, our hormones start to decline, specifically estrogen, and maybe our muscle mass also starts to decline depending on how active we are. We may have a lot of life stressors that are coming up. If we're parents and we have kids, we may have aging parents. And so, our cortisol may be higher and stress and just kind of lifestyle. A lot of us are sitting for many hours a day, especially since the pandemic where we're working from home. And so it's like we're moving less and our hormones are changing and maybe our muscle mass is decreasing. And then you've got stress and sleep. A lot of women in midlife start to really struggle with sleep. And the things that they used to do aren't working, or some women are still doing like a ton of cardio and too much HIIT, which is impacting your cortisol. And so it's a lot of different factors, right? It's not just calories in, calories out or anything like that. Yeah. I don't know, Marnie, if you want to add anything to that.
Well, I was just going to say a lot of women feel like this is a willpower problem, and it's not a willpower problem. And I just want you all to hear that message loud and clear because it's really about your biology. And I think once we start to actually understand what's going on in our bodies, that can really change how we approach everything. And I know I had to learn this, and I'm in this field because I think as we age, we just cannot do the things that we could do in our 20s and 30s and get away with it in the same way. And so, I think even starting with metabolism and understanding the metabolism and what it is and, what actually influences our metabolic rate, I think is a really good starting point, right? And we know, like Stephanie mentioned, we need muscle mass, which is so important. We're hearing over and over again that women in midlife need to strength train, right? So why is that? Why do we need to strength train? Well, that it helps our metabolism, right? Our body is converting food to energy, and the more muscle we have, the better our body does this.
Well, we're actually able to burn more calories at rest when you do real strength training. And we're talking about lifting heavy weights, not 5-pound dumbbells. But also, too, with the muscle comes protein. And most women, honestly, from all the coaching that I do, are not eating enough protein. And certainly not first thing in the morning for breakfast. So yeah, I just think you take all these factors, and everyone's body is very unique. And that's probably, the good starting point here for this conversation.
Well, and then you throw in declining estrogen, and that just adds to this whole issue in a way that it's not happening again when we're younger.
Yeah. So basically, what we're hearing is it's a perfect storm.
Yes, it's a
all
perfect
these
storm.
factors that really affect our metabolism, and muscle sounds like it's definitely a big, important part. Which that for me, that was a big realization, maybe just a few years ago in my practice. Of course, we don't learn any of this in medical school. So it was like relearning this over time. And the old story that I remember hearing was just like, oh, our metabolism declines with age. It sounded like something that was just set. It declines, which feels very, we feel very helpless in that. But then I learned about our muscles and how our protein intake, like our body changes how receptive it is to that. And so our needs actually change in, later on in life. So maybe we start there. Like you mentioned, most women are not getting enough protein. So how much protein does a woman really need to get then?
I mean, that's a bit of a loaded question right now, I feel.
I was just going to say, I don't think it depends on your goals, really. And Stephanie and I are both big believers of bio-individuality. And what that means is that there's no one size fits all for everybody just because you're a woman in midlife. Now, we know we need protein, but what is your goal at the end of the day? Some people say that you can, eat your ideal body weight in protein, in grams of protein, right? This is just for simplicity, if you want to weigh 100 pounds, you eat 100 grams of protein. But there are lots of different schools of thought on that, Stephanie. You can jump in, higher or lower, depending on how much your strength training and what your goals are.
Yeah. And I think look at this as like a period of life to get yourself back on track. So maybe you do up it and your goal is a gram of protein for your ideal body weight for the short term. And then once you kind of become more metabolically flexible and your metabolism is working how you want it to be, then you could dial it back down. And it doesn't just mean eating like a bunch of meat and beef sticks, you want to have a lot of plant-based sources of protein and mixed in. But I would say for most women that are in this phase, getting close to your ideal body weight, at least 100 grams. I mean, some women are probably getting 50 grams. So even just going from 50 to 100, even if you weigh 150 pounds, is going to be a good start because it's also going to balance your blood sugar and regulate insulin, which is so important. And that does contribute to a lot of the weight gain, specifically around the middle.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on the bio-individuality, as much as people hate hearing that. They're like, just give me the number. But I think what you point out here is that, maybe getting curious with how much we're eating currently and then seeing, okay, where can I bump it up? What can I actually do? And then, maybe we are, really trying to aim for a higher number. And then we kind of pull it back down to find, okay, where do we feel really good? And, what is going to be best for, like you said, my goals personally. Yeah.
And I was just going to say, I'm not like a huge fan of tracking, but I do think it is important maybe for a week or so to just write down the amount of grams of protein you are eating per day and what types of protein they are. Like Stephanie mentioned, you don't just want to be eating meat or eating powders for all of your protein. And how can you make it diverse? And what is the number you're getting daily so that you have an idea? Because a lot of people that I work with have no idea how much protein they're eating, or they think they're eating more than they actually are. So I think it's really good knowledge to track what you're eating for a week or so and then kind of fill in with wherever you're missing, or cut it back if you're going over the top with the protein, which some people actually do as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah, that sounds like a very reasonable approach. And I agree there, getting some insight so you actually know what you're eating and where you can get protein, what your sources actually are, but then not having to be a long-term obsessive thing.
Right.
Right. More stress. Yeah.
Yes. Because ultimately, this is about tuning in and listening to your body. And if you think of some of these symptoms that we're talking about related to metabolism that women are struggling with in midlife, it's your body's way of communicating that something's off, right? If you are, quote, eating healthy and moving and doing similar things that used to work for you, but you do have brain fog and you do have bloating and you're unable to lose weight no matter what you do, then that's your body's way of saying, okay, let's stop. Let's evaluate what's going on. And so part of this is just learning to eat more intuitively, ultimately, is being the end goal so that you don't have to micromanage your food intake, because most people don't want to do that. It's not super enjoyable in the long term from a sustainability standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to bring up stress because I think that that conversation doesn't happen very often. And a lot of people that feel that, weight around their middle in midlife just think, oh, it's a natural part of aging, right? But the stress accumulation that we feel as women affects our bodies tremendously. And if you are getting the protein you need and you're, getting your exercise and you feel like you're doing all the things, I would encourage you to look at your stress and see, and you could even test your cortisol levels to see where they fall, because visceral fat does have cortisol receptors and your body is so connected. And I don't think people really think about how much stress affects so much of what's going on inside of our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Yeah. Stephanie, did you have something to add?
Well, and just that segues into sleep, because a lot of times midlife women struggle with sleep and they're waking up at the middle of the night, or they still don't feel well rested in the morning. And a lot of times it's that racing mind connected to stress impacting the quality of your sleep. And then when you wake up and you're tired, well, maybe you're snoozing, maybe you're not getting in a morning walk, and then your hormones are dysregulated. So your leptin and your ghrelin, right? Like you're eating foods because you think you're hungry, even though you're not, and impacts your blood sugar. So it just has this whole ripple effect. And that's why it's like, let's get the foundations down first. And sleep and stress are paramount to health.
Yeah.
And you can get stuck in that like metabolic loop, right? Where you're just
Absolutely.
going in a circle and a circle and a circle. And so then it's like, how can you break this pattern?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that I see with a lot of women. And I think there's more awareness around stress, but it's also sort of brushed off. People act like, well, I can't do anything about that. So what am I supposed to do? I can't get rid of my husband. I can't get rid of my kid. So what am I supposed to do? But I think there is a lot actually that we can do with our response to stress, how much joy we're experiencing, how much fulfillment, because that really is the counterbalance of a lot of the sources of stress that we have. And you're right, like making some of these small shifts can then really, like, instead of being sort of a negative downward spiral of the stress, or sleep, stress, and insulin, that we're going in the upward spiral, that all of them help each other then.
Well, and you just said something that made me think of joy. Like, even if you can just have a few minutes of joy infused in your day, that can help regulate your stress and help you more resilient to stress. I mean, we're all going to have stress in our lives, especially people that are working or with families, kids, people they're responsible for. But it's how you manage your response and reaction to the stress.
Absolutely.
And so from gratitude and joy, it sounds very simple and kind of trendy lately, but it really does have an impact.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier protein in the morning, and you'd also touched on, insulin and our blood sugar with protein. Maybe we, double click back over there with, so how can we address the insulin, blood sugar piece that can also go so hand in hand with our stress throughout the day?
I mean, I think that the more that you have insulin circulating in your body and you're not able to process it, the more you have fat storage and you have cravings and you have energy crashes. And so we really want to keep that blood sugar very balanced. And, how do you keep your blood sugar balanced? Well, one way would be maybe taking a walk after you eat, right? That's a super simple way to bring your insulin down. Something that Stephanie and I talk about a lot on our own podcast. You could stand up at your desk if you're sitting at a desk all day and do 10 squats, right? 15 squats, like anything, just getting your body moving is going to help keep that blood sugar balanced.
And also the other thing, Marnie, is just like eating differently. Like you could eat the same plate of food, but if you eat your protein and your fiber and your fats first, and then eat the bread or the rice or the starchier vegetables after, that's also going to mitigate the spike. And, if for someone out there that really wants to dial into this, we do recommend on a short-term basis wearing a continuous glucose monitor. Pretty accessible. There's a lot of different companies out there, and that just gives you good insight to what's going on in your body because, again, going back to bio-individuality, the same food that might spike my blood sugar might not spike Marnie's. And then learning like, oh, if I take a walk after a meal or I eat the bread at the end or the dessert after, then my blood sugar doesn't spike. I mean, it's amazing. So doing that for even 2 weeks, a month max is very insightful.
Absolutely.
And it'll give you an idea of where you fall, right? And like, I can see a banana spiking my blood sugar on some days, and on some days it doesn't. So it's like, it's just really interesting. But at the end of the day, we want to know, how high your blood sugar is spiking, and then how fast does it come down, right? Because we don't want it to stay up at that high level for a long period of time. So looking for those patterns, again, not something we need to track indefinitely because tracking can be a lot for us mentally and cause stress that we don't need. But just getting the knowledge and then trying to make some changes from that knowledge.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually have a continuous glucose monitor on right now.
Is that
Done
your
it
first time
before.
wearing it?
It's not.
Okay.
No, I've done it before, but I completely agree with how insightful it can be with each person's individual response. I've had people where they're like, oh, like rice spiked my blood sugar, but cake or ice cream didn't. It's like very surprising. For me, it's been a while since I've done it before, but when I did, it was really interesting that the biggest insights that I got were one, that my stress was absolutely impacting my blood sugar. Again, the same food on a stressful morning versus a non-stressful morning was completely different. And seeing my blood sugar actually drop after certain meals, if it was like my insulin overreacted almost, and then I'd get a little bit of hypoglycemia. And I was like, oh, interesting. My blood sugar actually isn't high at all. It's actually kind of going too low.
Wow.
So I love it. I just
interesting.
like they dropped one off for me and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, sure, I'll do it again and just see where I stand now. I don't think I have any big concerns, but I just love, once in a while being able to have that little insight. So yeah, it's very
Which one are you doing? What company?
Lingo. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
I'm
one.
not familiar with that one.
Yeah, for freestyle.
Yeah.
I feel like all of them, like you can't really go wrong with them, and just getting that good insight with how you're doing can be really helpful. Yeah. With that, so I think we touched on some really important foundations. Are there any other pieces, maybe with sleep or the stress piece, that you think are important to mention as well?
Well, one thing I just like to mention, I don't know where that fits in. Maybe it's not sleep or stress, but I will say I see a lot of women who are just not eating enough food, and certainly not like they go, they'll be until like 2 or 3 o'clock and they'll eat like a couple of what I would say more like snacks and probably too many carbohydrates. And then the afternoon and evening, it's not working for them, right? So being in a caloric deficit, and for a lot of midlife women, myself included, we grew up in the phase of like calorie counting and the fat free and the snacks and do cardio. And that is likely not going to work for you, specifically at this point. So take the time. And this was where like meal planning and meal prep really comes into play, because if you don't have a plan, it's like, failing to plan is planning to fail almost. And I think that's what happens with a lot of women who are busy and working and juggling a lot of things, and they don't prioritize themselves and they don't prioritize their nutrition. And so just getting back to eating 3 really solid balanced meals a day with plenty of fiber and plenty of protein, and of course, incorporating healthy fats. One, it's going to regulate your blood sugar, which is what we're talking about. And then when you go into these caloric deficits, your body's under physical stress because it's like, I don't know when I'm going to eat again. And so it's storing on to the calories that you do eat. And often those calories tend to be more processed foods because you haven't eaten enough throughout the day. So, I mean, protein in the morning, but really like, how can you plan 3 meals a day that are true meals, sitting down, calm, no screens in front of you, no work, get out of the computer, and just eat 3 meals a day. You deserve that. Every single person deserves that.
Amen.
And I would add on to that does go hand in hand with I need more cardio. I need to, run every single day. I need to get on that Stairmaster and just pound it out. again, a lot of us grew up that way, right? So it's ingrained in us, but that's actually not helping you at all. The strength training is going to help you. So make that your priority. Like, we don't need 5 to 7 days a week of cardiovascular training, right? We most likely need 3 to 4 days of strength training and maybe, one high intensity day where you're getting into that zone 4 and 5. And then the rest of the days, you're more in like a zone 2 kind of cardio training. And I would just say that if you're not eating in the morning, like Stephanie mentioned, or not eating much during the day and doing that extreme cardio, that's actually working against you. Those are two things working against our bodies. So we want to work with our bodies. And I think that just trying to reframe what that looks like for you, and all of us sitting here can help with that, is going to help with your metabolic flexibility. And if you're looking to reduce, some of that visceral fat and brain fog and all of these things that we feel in midlife, these things are going to help.
Absolutely. Well, imagine the stress our body's going, experiencing when we're doing all those things. We're not eating enough. We're over exercising, and on top of all the other stress that comes up with this time of life, and our body's just more sensitive to stress. Yeah, that's a lot. And I think that is a hard one for many women to hear, because they're like, but it worked for me. Whenever in my
Right.
20s, if I ate a little bit too much, I would just go and do this really big exercise and it would all balance out. We had that resilience to be able to do that. And all of a sudden it doesn't work for us anymore and it backfires. And it's just, I think it's so confusing.
Right.
It is confusing. And people ask me about intermittent fasting all of the time. And again, I'm going to go back to bio-individuality, right? But from everything we just talked about, not eating until, if you're eating dinner at 6, 7 o'clock and then you're not eating again till noon or 2 p.m. and you're working out in the morning, it's probably not working with you, right? And men are a whole different ballgame. So we just have to take the equation because our bodies are very different. So I think you need to figure out what works for you if you're interested. I think it is good for your body while you're sleeping, rest and digest, right? To not have food after 7 p.m. or whatever time when you're done eating. But maybe that looks more like a 12-hour fast. Like, do we really need more than that? I don't know.
On a daily basis, and also with your cycle.
Probably not.
Yeah, if you're still menstruating, then you shouldn't be doing the same number of hours intermittent fasting every day throughout your cycle.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not seen a single woman, especially when they're still cycling, that it hasn't backfired in, at least eventually.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
And
it's
may look
interesting to me how so many of the trends that come up, in the health and wellness and fitness industry, they really are geared towards male bodies. And, women jump on because why wouldn't we, right? But then, like you said, a lot of it does end up backfiring because we are different. We're just biologically different.
Yeah. No.
I mean, it's hard because I feel like even when like the medical world and research, they were literally doing that. They were treating women as small men,
right?
And not actually setting women. And so I think there is almost like this, we all have this mentality of, oh, it's the same, but we're really not the same. We don't respond to those things the same, cold plunging and intermittent fasting, all these things. We have to, we can maybe still do it, but dial it differently for our bodies, maybe dial it down a little bit.
Well, and I think this gets back to stress, because I think a lot of women in midlife really handle stress very differently than men. Even a husband and a wife in the same household, dealing with the same lifestyle, challenges, if you will. We just do. And we tend to take on a burden. And what I see time and time again is more women do not prioritize themselves, from self-care, even just feeding themselves, finding time to move their bodies every day. And that stress just builds up. And it's, I don't know if just this mothering, nurturing kind of expectation or something ingrained within us. But I think that is what impacts a lot of this as well. And then that has a direct impact on our sleep. And I know you kind of touched on that earlier. but really dialing into sleep. And again, we're going back to like a little bit of bio-individuality and devices, but if you can track your sleep, even for a short amount of time, and understand, the quality of your sleep, it's not just the hours. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm so exhausted. My head hits the pillow. I fall right to sleep. I don't have an issue with that. Well, actually, that may be an issue if you're really just falling to sleep immediately. You're overtired. Or maybe you're waking up in the middle of the night, or you're not feeling well rested in the morning. And so you can't get up to have some quiet alone time before the rest of the household wakes up. So that's where some of these devices can be really helpful for a short amount of time to really understand the inputs that affect the quality of your sleep and how well rested you feel in the morning without diving into all the details. But
absolutely. Yeah.
And
And a lot of patients too, they're surprised. They're like, I get 8 hours of sleep. And they're like, oh, I'm actually only getting like 7 hours because they're
right.
waking and they're taking time to fall asleep or whatever it is. It can be very insightful.
Well, it's super interesting. So I've been wearing an Oura ring for, I think it's a little over 2 years. And my goal was to wear it for 1 year and then get the information and stop wearing it. But I have changed my sleep dramatically and learned so much. And I will say, we haven't mentioned alcohol yet, but I think alcohol is a big part of all of this conversation. And I think cutting back is the way to go any way, shape, or form. I love a good glass of wine in the summer or, on a weekend or whatever, but alcohol does not mix well with women, right? Like it just doesn't. I wish that it did, but it doesn't. And so in any type of cutting back we can do is going to affect us in a positive way. I think I can say that pretty confidently. My sleep, I can have one glass of wine and my sleep score is down. Like it's unbelievable to me how I see that direct effect on my sleep. But, there's just study after study coming out in the last year about how alcohol is not great for us. And they're realizing, they used to say what you could have like, I can't even remember what it was, maybe 2 drinks a day or something. And now it's like, if you're having a drink a day, that's not great, right? Now it's like maybe you're having 1 to 3 drinks a week. I don't know what you guys think, but
oh yeah. I mean, it's so common, and similar to Marnie, I've had the same experience. And I think it's interesting when we do our Vitality Reboot. So we have a quarterly Vitality Reboot, and in January we do 2 weeks. So normally I kind of do a dry January, but when I cut out alcohol and really minimize processed food and other desserts and things like that, a direct correlation with my sleep scores. Direct correlation. It's just amazing. Your body has all these really important processes to do at night. And if your liver isn't having to process alcohol in addition to maybe a heavy meal or something, when you eat out later, which is fine on occasion, that's going to happen. It's able to do all those other things. And so you get into that deep restorative sleep and you feel amazing the next day.
I feel like that's a big misconception that I see too with a lot of women is that they're maybe having some alcohol to help them sleep, or they think that.
yes,
but maybe not realizing that it could actually be having a really big like negative impact. Maybe it helps them fall asleep, but maybe they're not actually getting the quality sleep. They're not feeling great the next day, and then having that ripple effect continue on.
And then feeling down, right? Like alcohol is a depressant, people, right? It does have that effect. Even if you are thinking it's helping with your stress, long term, it is not helping with your stress. So something to at least think about.
Yes.
Put it on your radar, as the goal here is to tune into ourselves, right? You don't have to do everything at once. It's all about taking these small steps to make ourselves feel better, right? From the inside out. So what are some of the things that we talked about today that maybe you can implement in your own life slowly, and so you can make it sustainable?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up alcohol, because I think some of these things, women can be really afraid to get rid of. They're like, this is my thing though. This helps me, not be as snappy with my kids in the evening or whatever it is. But truly, like you said, this is an opportunity to feel so much better that you don't even feel like you need it. You don't need that alcohol to wind down in the evening anymore. You don't need to have the sugar to, boost you up again throughout the day. You can just feel really good all the time. And it's so much better than a glass of wine, in my opinion. And then you can have that for, again, those special occasions, or be much more like mindful on and balanced with these things.
Well, I think this also ties nicely into emotional eating, alcohol and emotional
Mhm.
eating, because with emotional eating, whether it's food or alcohol, ask yourself, what void am I trying to fill? And ultimately, the food or the alcohol is trying to make you feel better. There's an emotional attachment to it, which is why it's so hard. And once you kind of start thinking about that, maybe journaling or just asking yourself that question and how you feel in the moment, like, okay, I'm stressed, so I turn to alcohol or I turn to food. It's both are similar, right? And so how can you address the underlying root cause, which is the stress, and find other ways? Maybe it's doing some breath work or just leaving your house and taking a walk for 10 minutes or calling a friend. There's other ways to address the stress. And then you come back and you're like, oh, maybe I don't need the alcohol, or, maybe I can have a different beverage that's non-alcoholic.
Yeah, the rituals, I think the rituals can be so beautiful around like the morning coffee and the evening glass of wine. But you can have the ritual without the alcohol too, which can be really fun to explore. Like, oh, I'm going to make a new mocktail tonight or something like that. I think
Yeah.
you can still have, part of that thing that, makes you
Mhm.
feel good, or on that summer evening, just really rounds out your day. But it doesn't have to look exactly like it is now.
Maybe you're taking a walk instead, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are so many. This has been so juicy. And I think you've given so many like very actionable tips here. But if I could ask, maybe like, if a woman's hearing all this and is like, okay, great, but this is a lot, where does she start? What would be maybe like one or two places that you'd say, okay, just start here and then work on the other things going forward?
I, so I would say start by tracking your protein. That's a really easy thing to do. Track your protein, see how much protein you're eating every day, and then also maybe write down, in addition to that, what you're doing for your workouts. Just start there and get information, I think, is a really simple thing to do.
Yeah. And when you're tracking your protein, I think the goal roughly, just for people out there that want a number, 25 to 30 grams, should be your goal.
Per meal.
Per meal, at least for like, let's just start with breakfast. Start with one
Mhm,
meal
mhm.
and then kind of go from there, baby steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I
I
feel
think
like that.
too, yeah, the other thing that I think can be really helpful for anyone that's pretty sedentary, which I mean, it's hard not to be unless you're really intentional, is maybe track your steps too. So,
Mm.
as much as strength is so important, like Marnie and I talked about a lot on here, and I really firmly believe that if you're not moving very much throughout the day, you can't don't just jump to the strength training, right? So, how can you just move your body? And it can be walks, it can be 15-minute walks throughout the day or one long walk with the goal of getting close to 10,000 steps. Maybe if you're at 3,000 right now, you just want to get up to 6 and build up slowly, but just focus on movement throughout the day, getting up and taking snack breaks, exercise snack breaks.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
love that term, the like exercise snacks. I feel like it's so much more, doable for some people
yeah,
than, oh, I have to
Right.
carve out an hour to do this workout. No,
Yeah,
take a little like 10 minutes is better than nothing. Yeah.
absolutely.
I would
Absolutely.
I would also say, Stephanie mentioned this earlier, but our Vitality Reboot liver detox program, I highly recommend. It's 7 days, and we've had so many people go through this program. A lot of people come back, and we really walk you through how to pull the toxins out of your body, because we're getting so many toxins from our environment and our foods and all of these things. And we lead a lot of women through this program, and a lot of women that feel sluggish, or, they have the brain fog, or maybe they're feeling inflamed in their bodies, all of these things. And we really help support you on this journey with food and recipes and smoothies and tips on sleep and more of all of what we're talking about for 7 days. And I just highly recommend that you join us for that program.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And it's not like a restrictive, crazy protocol program at all. It's very supportive. And Marnie and I are there the whole time to coach and guide you through it. But it's just a great reset. Even if you're doing a lot of these things, but maybe it's just inconsistent, or you've been on vacation for a few weeks and you want to reset. I mean, Marnie and I both do it. And like Marnie said, because of all the toxins in our environment, it has nothing to, if you want to lose weight, that may happen, but it's even beyond, it's much more beyond the number on the scale. It's how you feel and what's going on the inside.
Amazing. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people like hear detox and it sounds like, some intense cleanse or something like that. But, the
This
things
is
you
not a
just
juice cleanse.
mentioned,
Wow.
like just getting the right nutrients and eating even enough protein. It's just getting your liver and your detox pathways to move the way that they do every single day. That's
Right.
amazing. And that's so important with detoxing estrogens and, all of those toxins that we're exposed to. So that sounds amazing. Well, wonderful. I mean, where can women find you and, maybe sign up for the reset?
Yeah. So our website is
artoflivingwell.us.
Yep.
And we have a podcast called the Art of Living Well podcast, where we drop episodes multiple times a month, and we're on all the platforms. So if you just Google the Art of Living Well podcast, you'll find us.
Yeah. And then head over to Instagram, where we're the Art of Living _well. And come find us, come join us.
And we'll link that in the show notes, of course, too, so people can click on through. Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for being here. Again, I feel like this conversation had a lot of like great mic drop moments that women really need to hear. And you've given so many actionable tips too, that they can really just start to implement today in a very sustainable way. So I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having us, Miranda.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.